we are back. So sorry about that. We're not sure what happened. Oh, but there's a cute fuzzy cat. Maybe it brought some magic and that interfered with the technological functioning of things.
The black cat.
She does that.
I'm going to go ahead and hop off screen, but we are back, so do not fret, peoples.
Yeah. What were we talking about? Oh, God, it's something completely not to do with it.
Yes. I was just saying that being wrong is not unfamiliar territory for me, so that's fine.
What's your cat's name, Christopher?
This is Jane.
Jane.
Yeah, nice. Very simple.
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, she's a rescue kitty, and
the best kind.
Yeah, I heartily agree. And she's going to her favorite nook, which is behind my computer, which is where she likes to go when I write as well.
I didn't realize that black cats get a hard time, and they're like by far the most rescuable of the rescue cats because people won't take them.
What people don't realize about a black cat is that if you get a black cat and they live in your home, you are automatically proof against bad luck from other black cats.
It's the other way around, yeah, because they can't. I mean, they're always walking past you, so presumably it goes out the other side and back in. So.
Yeah, you're either with them or against them.
Yes, yes. Mordew. It's a very good book.
Mordew is a very, very good book.
Yeah, you're like the end, or not? I don't know. I mean,
oh no, you got me nervous now. I will say
one of these things. I don't know. I mean, I try not to look at Goodreads because Goodreads is a fearsome hole of for most writers, I think. And some people really don't like a kind of segue that goes on in the middle. But I think it's really good. Otherwise, I wouldn't have written it. Yeah, so I need to see how that turns out.
Well, I'm curious myself now because again, I'm just at the transition point, so I have no idea. I have no idea what's coming, and that's delightful.
I try to do that because sometimes you know what's going to happen. Quite a lot of the things I've read, not your book by any stretch of the imagination, but a lot of the things I've read recently, I could basically predict from about 20% of the way in. So you're reading it, you're thinking, I was watching, and this is quite good. I'm not saying anything against Midnight Mass that I've been watching on Netflix. If you watched Midnight Mass, I know you're right, horror. It's very light, kind of Stephen King-ish horror, but without most of the Stephen King-ish parts. But in it, there are some people who have been artificially aged, and unfortunately, the makeup in it isn't quite sufficient to hide the fact that they're a younger actor who's been artificially aged. And now I'm like about 2/3 of the way in, and I've guessed everything so far. I'm thinking, well, okay, that person who's artificially aged must be, in fact, going to get younger. As this, and now they are doing so. I feel like I'm doing it in my own work. I try not to let people guess what's going to happen next. I don't know whether that's a thing, but I think that's probably good practice on the writing front, is to somehow get it so that you don't know what's coming next. Otherwise, you could just put the book down, right? And then, and they're all in the shop presumably and never buy it. So.
Well, I suppose if you're the sort of reader who reads strictly for plot to find out what's going to happen, then you would be correct in that one could abandon the work. But
that's true.
When someone is
luxuriated in my wonderful prose, of course, then you would have to read it regardless.
Guilty. I do.
Good.
There are phrases which really stuck with me. You know, I didn't even write them down. Just like the material is stretching over the arse of a woman bending over, and it looks like two bald priests sharing one felt hat. That is inspired.
Yeah, I laughed at that myself when I read it back again. Your book's full of that kind of stuff. I was always hearing amusing forms of insult and thinking, oh God, I'm going to have to steal that. But I don't know how well you're known over here, whether I can just steal your work kind of wholesale.
Unfortunately for that plan, Galaxy has published it as well.
Yeah, I saw that. I was in Piccadilly Waterstones, and there was a copy of your book in there, and I was like, damn, that's foiled my plan of...
Won't be shoplifting in this store.
Shoplifting ideas. Yeah, so yeah, I try not to make myself too predictable.
Yeah.
And I do concentrate on the writing. I think as someone who used to write in, or still does write in literary fiction, I didn't want to look like I'd kind of gone off into fantasy fiction as if it was some kind of easy trip when I was going to somehow go off and and take the piss out of fantasy fiction as if I was some. Well, frankly, I wrote fantasy fiction before I wrote anything else, and from a very early age. Just no one wanted to publish it. So now I've got to the point where I can publish. I did publish Mordew, and I'm delighted to return to the place where I belong. Some person, some reviewer on the internet, I can't remember who it was, said, this is written by, this person isn't a fantasy writer. This person's a literary fiction writer who is now writing fantasy. And they went on to say nice things about the book. But in my heart, I was thinking, that's bullshit, because that's all I've ever done is write fantasy. I've tried to crowbar the fantasy material into literary fiction and hope that nobody noticed, and they didn't. But all I ever really wanted to do was this. So.
You know, and these dividers are so artificial. Like, at what point does it become literary? Is there an actual word? Like if you use just enough of a certain word, does it magically?
I think there's a big list of words that you can only use in literary fiction in various combinations. But I mean, the stuff I used to write, I have written, were people who were having schizophrenic delusions. So everything they were writing was thinking was unreal. So I wrote a book about Daniel Paul Schreiber, the German judge who thought that God had scoured the world of every single living human who lived on it. And then impregnated him with a new race of men who would then live on. And God was being drawn by the power of Schreiber's nerves down to earth, which is, if that's not fantasy material, I don't know what it is, because, it's not real. It's not a realist, despite the fact that he was a schizophrenic judge. So I don't know. You're right. They're arbitrary distinctions.
Yeah. And my first 5 novels were horror novels, technically.
Yeah, so I hear. I haven't read any of those yet. I was looking forward to reading them. Now I might have some time. Yeah, so I hear they're good, right?
I like them.
Good.
Yeah, my cat seems fond of them, though she doesn't. Yeah. She likes to lay on them.
It's fond of them. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. What kind of horror is it? I know we should be talking about me, but I'm more than happy to talk about your horror novels. What are you?
One reviewer said that my novels were protean, and I swiftly looked that up. And,
that means varied.
Yes, and they were correct. They're all very different. The first novel is a Southern Gothic that is actually set in Georgia in 1935. Nice. The second one is about the Black Death, and it takes place in France in 1348.
Oh, cool.
Okay.
I'm going to buy these. This is audiobooks are the things I can listen to at the moment, although perhaps not right at the moment because I'm on sabbatical, so I'm writing solidly till Christmas. But
you're under contract for a trilogy.
That's right.
How far along are you?
So the first one obviously is published. I have 2 masters, as it were, in that I've got my English publishers and they have sold the American rights to Tor. So they're expecting me to provide, they were expecting me to provide the next book in 2 days' time, but they are going to be sadly disappointed. Unfortunately, they're going to have to wait a little bit. And then I think the next book's due mid next year. So I'm expecting the publication dates to be sometime September-ish 2022 for the English edition. I don't know whether Tor are going to race through the paperback and then pick up the next book and then simultaneously launch with the English stuff or the British editions or not. But I got to get it written one way or another by about this time next year. So it's easy enough because they're all planned out and most of the writing's done. And I'm a fast writer and a good first drafter. I didn't used to be, but over the course of decades, I've managed to get myself to the point in which the first drafts are relatively solid.
So you are a writer who plans carefully before you.
Not well. It's sometimes definitely with these. This because it's a plot that resolves. So consequently, I need to make sure it resolves itself in a kind of relatively logical fashion. And for those philosophers among you, it takes a dialectic structure. So each of the books has a thesis, antithesis, synthesis structure, and it's hard to kind of freewheel that one and just hope that it comes off, because you need to give a kind of sense that is paying off. And then the trilogy itself also does something similar. So it has a this, that, the other type scenario going on too. So I need to have some sense of plotting going on. But that doesn't mean I kind of like stick with it, which is one of the reasons why they're getting this one late. I had a good idea, unfortunately, about a month ago. And that good idea requires me now to rewrite a whole bunch of the material. So I hope they don't mind too much. Yeah.
Now, was the detour character driven? Did you find your character just wanted to do something else?
Structure, to be honest, Christopher. It was a structural thing. I thought to myself, this would make a good structure, because most of my problems I find with writing are structural. I get to the end and I've done a load of character stuff and it's all cool, and a load of good ideas and they're all cool, but the book doesn't hang together. And then I have to try and apply some structure to it. And with this second one, I suddenly had a brilliant idea, which I won't tell. Well, like two different versions of the book. I thought, we're in a world in which two different versions of a book can be produced. And I was thinking of basically having very similar material, but edited differently, so that it runs as a continuous narrative in one, and then also as a series of short stories. And then all of which would kind of agglomerate together to give the same kind of sense of an ending. And I was so kind of keen on this idea that I thought, okay, well, I'll give this another couple of weeks and see whether this will work. It may not work, and you may just find there's one version of it with very, very kind of obvious structure. But I was going to see how that worked out. So most of my characterization stuff I'm relatively comfortable with, because that's all I really do. I came to this conclusion early on in my writing career or writing practice, that writing things from the point of view of the character that you're writing about is the thing to do. And then just focus entirely, just like inhabit that person's mind, and then run it directly, whatever the story that you thought you were going to tell, whatever world that you thought you were going to build, all the things that you thought you're going to have to put in, you can only do it if you just run it directly through that person's point of view, and then just let it go. So character's relatively built in to everything, because the whole narrative voice is all about the character and how they experience the world that you've made. So that's interesting. I mean, the sort of tight third person point of view is very effective. You know, you get a sense of character, but you still have the camera just removed enough so you can show. So you can do long shots and medium shots, and at the same time get the whole first person narrative kind of closeness of character without having to do the first person, which I'm never that comfortable with. I can't think of anything other than a short story that I've written in first person.
I love it.
Yeah, you do it really well, but I always find myself getting self-conscious the whole time. I don't know why.
It's interesting.
Like I'm lying. I don't know. I don't feel like when I'm doing in third person. In first person, I always think, well, I'm not doing these things. I'm not. I know I'm not doing that, and that causes me to slow down on the writing process, I think. Whereas
as long as you're lying, as long as you're lying about somebody else and not yourself, you're fine.
Yeah, exactly. Then that's fine. But I don't know. Perhaps that's a narcissism of some type. I don't know. It's like I definitely find it easier to talk about what other people are getting up to rather than me. I also think that there was a period when I was like reading a lot, that everything seemed to be in the first person, and everybody seemed to suggest that the first person was the only thing you could really do. And lots of people say things like, particularly in creative writing classes, that the first person is really good for action and excitement and keeping people invested and engaged in the text. And I thought, I'm sure you can do it with a third person too. And I think you can.
Yeah. The first person, to me, if you're using the metaphor of the camera, the first person sort of almost like a found footage piece. You've got
or
this
like one of those
shaky
go cams, those ones that you have on your forehead, so that you can see, when you get into a car accident or whatever it is, when you're riding your bike. That I think it might be that fixedness that I find difficult. I mean, you can do it still. You can get long shots and medium shots, but they tend to be in retrospect. So people are always thinking about things of the past and thinking about things that they did once and all those kind of things.
So it comes with an innate spoiler, doesn't it?
It does, kind of. Well, it does, because they're alive at the end. Unlike your old third-person narrator, who can be stone dead at the end, which keeps some of the tension inherent in the book, in it. Yes.
Certainly, yeah. I can't imagine George R.R. Martin writing in the first person because he's so killer. It's like,
well, writing at all. I mean, if you're hanging around waiting for, what's it called? The last one, Winds of something.
Winter? Is it?
Is it? Okay. Yeah. I mean, he's more than happy to produce wildcards material. I seem to notice that. I would imagine whoever's waiting for the songs of Doodah and what name should be cross every time another wildcards book comes out. But then he's doing games now, isn't he? I hear Elden Ring. My son is very looking forward to that. Having played Demon's Souls on the PS5, he's now waiting for Elden Ring to come out.
What is Elden Ring? I don't know.
It's a game by the Demon's Souls and the Demon's Souls thing and George R.R. Martin. So I think the Demon's Souls guy did the game mechanics and George R.R. Martin's doing the story.
But I have to say, as much as I am eager to, have him wrap the series up as well, certainly better than Game of Thrones HBO did with that last season, which I will never forgive them.
What was going on? Okay, my thing is, they could have solved a lot of those problems. Okay, if warging or whatever it's called, was part of the Daenerys and the dragons thing. So if warging was involved, and then it had some backfeed, so that if you warged with the creature, it affected you, then you could have explained why she went into a completely uncharacteristic evil kind of empress type mode at the end, because that could have been the dragon affecting her mentality or whatever, and consequently when the bells all ring, she could have just gone crazy because she was too busy warging with a feral dragon and consequently couldn't have mercy or something along those lines.
Or a dragon who was grieving its sibling,
something like that, and was acting irrationally, or just make it obvious what the hell's going on. But why didn't they just kill them off like Game of Thrones did the rest of it, one at a time throughout the last series? All the good characters should have been killed off until the Night King is standing at whatever his name, Ice King, whatever he was called, was standing at the gates of King's Landing, and then him and what's the face Lannister could have faced off. That would have been fine. Okay, fine, that's good. Everyone dies, which is kind of in world. Like, it's the kind of philosophy that whole thing was setting up. Anyway.
Well, I enjoy this. This is really a fun thing to do, to say, what would you have done? Sort of thing. I have my idea.
They've made winter come, I'll tell you that much, because they spent the whole first 5 seasons going on about how winter was coming, but I didn't see much winter coming. By the end of it, winter hadn't come, as far as I can see.
Maybe they meant Edgar Winter, because the Snow King sort of looked like him if you really squint.
Or Shelley Winters.
Shelley Winters. Doing Snow Queen.
That would have been great.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I do want to take a moment for a commercial announcement as you are watching this. There is a little green button right down here, purchase books, and please do that, because that's what Mysterious Galaxy is here for. So yes, keep support.
They seem to be a good crowd. So buy their books.
Support a great independent bookstore and get some books. Yeah. Where are we at time? We're at the 30-minute mark.
I believe
it's time to start taking. Yeah, I've got 2 of them here, and I'll go ahead and and if you're watching and you've got questions for Alex Pheby, then please shoot them across the bow, would you? Here's one. How long had you been working on Mordew from the first spark of an idea to getting it published?
Wow. I know the answer to that because my computer very helpfully shows the dates in which I first saved the documents. So I think the first part of the writing would have been 2011, which is 10 years ago now. So
wow.
Yeah, so the first novel I ever published was in 2009 with a really small press, and that was about someone who was escaped from a kind of mental hospital and then ran through a kind of Little Red Riding Hood type scenario. And that published to absolutely no acclaim whatsoever, unfortunately, which would have been nice as it had. But it was a good book. I think it's a good book. You'll have to pay about £100 if you want to buy a copy of it, though, because there was only about 50 produced. They're available. It's called Grace. So I think I must have started writing it not long after I realized that the publishers who'd published that weren't going to publish my PhD novel. So because I finished my PhD when I was in 2011, which was the book that became Playthings, which didn't get published until 2015. So the answer to that question is I started in 2011 and then published two books before they decided that they were going to publish Mordew. And it kind of got finished eventually when someone said, okay, we're going to publish this. So I think one of those things that readers don't realize is that they imagine that writers are sitting there dictating the course of their career and saying, I am going to do this next, and now I am going to do this, where far more likely is what's happened to me, is which you write loads and loads and loads and loads of stuff which no one pays any attention to, and then someone eventually decides they're going to publish something that you've written, opening the door for you then to come in and publish all of the stuff that you'd written before and was desperate to get done. So I think that was definitely 10 years in the making then, I guess, getting to here. But I'd been writing stuff of that type since I was about 15, because I was a big Dungeons and Dragons player as a teenager. There's a lot of kind of, in those days, it was the lonely and disaffected and kind of slightly geeky people who did that. Now it's terribly mainstream, it seems. Everybody's doing D&D nowadays. But I was one of those kids who sat around, making adventures and getting his friends around to play them.
What else were we going to do? It's Frankie Goes to Hollywood was playing Two Tribes Go to War. We were hearing the emergency broadcast alert every 30 minutes. Everything was just so shit. You just sort of had to bury your face in Orktown and roll some dice.
Thatcher and Reagan and worrying about nuclear war. Why not live in a fantasy kingdom? It's certainly. I mean, I guess people have got their own problems, like the impending end of the environment, for example, to worry about. So there's plenty of reason to fantasize about other places. Yes, but I've been writing things like this, and I think I've always been attracted to the kind of unrestrained, powerful revenge type stories. And I really like Carrie. Carrie, I really thought was great. It's just that kind of like, I mean, I'm sure you're not supposed to sympathize quite to the degree that I sympathize with Carrie, at least in the Brian De Palma film version, when she kills everybody in that school hall.
I disagree.
Are we supposed to sympathize with that? Yeah, okay, fine.
Yes, because you can't kill all those twats in real life, can you? You have to have a fictional character come and rain fire on their deserving heads so you can enjoy that, because you know it's not a real body count.
Yeah, that's true. And that's, I think, I mean, it also had a kind of erotic shower scene at the beginning, which, I mean, given that I can only have been in my early teens, that and the extreme violent revenge fantasy stuff kind of, I think, might have hardwired my brain into liking those kind of narratives.
How were you not like a teenager?
But I also like Dickens. That was one of the things I used to like as a kid, and Emile Zola and all of the kind of realist European types. So it's not probably accidental that I imagine Mordew as being like a cross between Carrie and Oliver Twist, which is a very similar kind of ethos going on there.
Strong Dickens energy in there.
There's a Dickens energy in there.
Dickens energy there.
I am known for my big Dickens.
Indeed, sir. Indeed.
Yes, it was. Everyone likes the Dickens. Yeah, and I think that has carried through across everything that I've done. It's that kind of that cat meowing here, Jane meowing. Is that sense of unrestrainedness? I think that I really like. And that has carried through all of my writing, and unrestrainedness in relation to what it is you think is real. I think that one of those, that's the kind of thing that's really attracted me to writing about people with mental illnesses, as well as my own experience of mental illness, is that sense that there's no proper real. And the moment you understand that, particularly as a writer, it gives you a huge amount of freedom, even in realist fiction, to write non-real things. So, if you're dealing with people who have schizophrenia, for example, you're not in a situation where you have to adhere to a really tedious kind of, council estate realism that is very popular in the UK, or worse, upper middle class realism like, Brideshead Revisited, or any of the traditional English 20th century literary fiction writers. So instead, you can just do whatever it is you like.
Or back to Zola, Madame Bovary. Yeah. But
even in Zola, Zola's material is excessive. So there was a scene in Mordew that my editor Sam Joyce made me cut out. Prissy, you won't have got to this bit yet, so I won't spoil it too much. Prissy, the female, the girl character, who's kind of Nathan's one of Nathan's friends, goes to the brothel where her sister works and castrates all of them of the clients of the brothel, and then parades their genitalia around on a spear. But that's not in the book, so you'll have, those of you who are watching this will know that it was supposed to be, because Sam thought it was acceptable.
Well, it's going to be, that's the way I'm going to imagine it now. So.
Well, too, you'll see that bit, and she's supposed to be cackling maniacally. She parades around through the streets with a great load of genitalia on a stick.
Wow,
I don't know why.
Very shades of Odysseus there too.
Yeah, as well. So it has its classical references. I don't know. I mean, clearly, Sam hasn't read Germinal or Ulysses. Consequently, he should be forced to put it back in. Perhaps I'll get him to put it back in for the omnibus edition when that comes out, which I think would only be fair.
Ooh, we've got some questions piling up. I've been inattentive.
Okay.
Let's see what else have we got here. All right. Where did the inspiration for A Place Where God Is Dead come from, especially the idea of giving him a physical corpse?
Okay, well, the physical corpse, these are secrets, so don't tell anybody else. But when I was a kid, I really liked the kind of semi Kraftwerk-esque work of Gary Newman. Do you remember Gary Newman?
Yes, I do.
He did Cars and all that kind of stuff. He had loads of different albums as well, which were largely kind of science fiction in orientation. And one of his songs begins, "And what if God's dead?" Right, which is like one of my favorite things and my favorite songs. And then there's a Philip K. Dick novel, I can't remember which one it is, where the corpse of God is found in orbit, floating in orbit around the Earth by a kind of a satellite that goes out, and they find God's corpse there. And I think those two things, as well as my obvious kind of enormous imagination and genius, the things that combine to think about that. And then you got Nietzsche. My dad was a philosopher as well, so all of those ideas I thought were very useful. And I also like the idea, I think, of instead of doing that thing that lots of people do, which is denying the truth of religions, which is to accept the truth of religions, but in the wrong way. So to say instead that there is a God, but he's dead. Now he's been buried because someone's killed him. So you can show respect for the kind of complex imaginative work that goes into religious ideas, and also kind of do something interesting with them too. because as the books carry on, it becomes obvious that kind of traditional Abrahamic religious beliefs are perfectly compatible with the way that the world goes on, providing you can get to the point in which human beings get to kill God, and then try and take his place. And what that means, and obviously there's a metaphorical thing going on at the same time, but an allegory and all that kind of malarkey. But at the same time, I like that idea.
You know, you're being perfectly self-deprecating when you say, "Oh, my, huge imagination," but there's no way to sit there straight-facedly without being a twat and say I have huge imagination. But as your interviewer, I am perfectly allowed to say that I have an enormous imagination. No, you have an enormous imagination. This is one of the most, if you're, to the viewers, listeners, I just want to say this is one of the most inventive books I've read in a long time.
Thanks.
It reminds me, it has some of the same energy of City of Bohane. Did you ever read that?
Yes, I did.
Oh, that was a fun one too. And what's that?
I didn't copy it.
No, not at all. Not at all. No. It's just got that same feeling of like freshness.
My feeling is I'm like a sponge, right? So anything good I like, obviously. and I'm very unrestrained when it comes to writing. So if it's good and it's come from somewhere else, then I have no trouble whatsoever in using it. And I think those things also, anything good. This is why sometimes, because I teach creative writing too, and students worry very much as if whether they're going to be influenced. So they say things, well, I'm not writing anything at the moment because I don't want to be influenced. Be influenced.
Please.
Just take all of that stuff in because, well, for one, there's an evolutionary kind of aspect to that. If it's made it to the shelves, then it's probably good in some way or for someone. So it's good to have those kind of resonances in your work. And there is no original thought anyway, so you should embrace all of these different disparate energies and then kind of pile it through as hard as you can in the way that you stylistically want to do it, and then that's what I think people think of as a kind of writerly style, is your ability to kind of channel this material.
And how do they teach, and how are you taught to paint in the classical style? It's by copying the master.
Exactly.
You imitate. First you imitate, and then you truly create. You have to find your voice. It isn't born in a vacuum.
No, quite. And if it was, it would be useless, because then all you're doing is producing material that people either don't like or don't understand. one or other of those things. And eventually people can come to understand things that are extremely difficult to like. But it's the kind of thing that only takes place usually after you're dead. So it's not much use to you if you're trying to make a living out of writing, for example.
So true. I wish to point out once again the purchase books button there. Mysterious Galaxy are trying to earn an honest living over here in a difficult time. And they've got in the chat here all the books that we've mentioned. We've got Oliver Twist. Yeah. We've got City of Bohane. Surprised they didn't dust off a Madame Bovary, or did they? No, they got Carrie. They got Carrie there. So get buying some books. Holidays are coming. Oh, and
how are you doing over there in the States with your transport issues? Over here, we've got no petrol, gas, as you would call it, and no lorry drivers or truck drivers. So all our shops are empty, and there are book shortages coming for Christmas. I don't know whether this is going to come to you in a minute, but we have real serious problems distributing material up and down the country. So
we're having some of that. I don't to that extent. I occasionally hear, we couldn't get this in, but it's mostly Brexit.
Brexit has gone crazy over here.
I don't know what it is with our, not to wax political, but our two countries have lately been involved in some serious shooting oneself in one's own arse.
Really?
It's sad to watch.
It's been taking place for a long time, though, I think. I mean, you're roughly my age by the look of you, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I'm 52.
I thought when we were young in the 80s, even in the 70s, I thought we'd all be living in an anarchist commune on Mars by now. I didn't think they were going to stop the space race and then just decide, well, what are we going to do now? I don't know, just faff about and then just wreck everything.
and then wreck everything.
That's what it seemed to be. And, and look, everything seems to have gone backwards.
Yeah.
I have to say. Perhaps that's what all 50-year-old men say, though. This is what I wonder. When I think back to the past, I wonder if my granddad was thinking along these lines. The only things I can think of that there seems to be any progress, that's in gender politics. Not even in kind of feminism, but in the politics of gender itself. That seems to have made massive leaps into the future.
Not in all of our states, sadly.
No, unfortunately, I hear Texas has gone crazy. So, yeah. I mean, have they watched The Handmaid's Tale? I mean,
watched it.
They haven't read it, but
they're living it. They're doing a statewide reenactment.
It does seem to be like a Renaissance fair, but of some kind of terrible.
Pick a happier
Renaissance.
Pick a better dystopia, please. That's
really. I'd take the dystopia of Blade Runner 2049 rather than that one.
Right? This is some Oliver. I mean, to go back to your history, this is some Oliver Cromwell shit. It's no good.
Yeah, really. It's crazy. I mean, I'd like to say it was medieval, but I think things were pretty advanced in the medieval period. I think people got to do basically what they wanted, and no one was disciplining their bodies at that level at all. I mean,
I don't know about that.
Well, only by sawing bits of them off in public. They didn't tell you what you could do with them. If you did anything wrong, they sawed your head off or whatever, but various parts of your body, one after the other. Stole some bread or whatever. Up until that point, you could do what you like with your body, including, give birth or not, depending on whether you could get away with it. Anyway, how do we get into that? That's I think the world. I
did a little too much specific research in the Middle Ages, writing Between Two Fires, to fully agree that we're facing anything quite like that yet. Although
I'm getting mine from Foucault, which is not a good source, as it turns out, as you increasingly go forward. I didn't realize he was such a terrible person in a kind of Roman Polanski-esque kind of way. But
don't ruin it for me. I don't.
Yeah, don't look into it. It's not a good idea.
I'll just read the books.
But I think Judith Butler seems to be doing well. So Gender Trouble and all of her gender as a performative act type material seems to be mainstream now, which is crazy because it was extremely complicated, difficult queer theory when I was at university. So I used to teach it in the 90s, and everybody looked at you askance. If you said that there was no biological basis for gender, everyone would look at you and go, "What? Well, you're crazy. How dare you speak these nonsense words?" But now it's mainstream, even on the right. Bizarrely, it's mainstream political thought. So there must be some progress. He thinks of progress,
but as it always
unusual ways.
But as it always is, when there is progress, there's blowback. You have Renaissance and Reformation. So while we are making progress in these ways you're talking about, the people who don't want that progress are very
reactionary forces.
Yes, that's what we're seeing.
Yeah, not unlike Russia in the 20th century, post-revolution. Yes. Anyway, I'm sure that's not what we're here to talk about. Yeah.
Let me get another question in here. We've got some legitimate questions queued up here. All this talk of dystopia. The cover art for Mordew is really great and in a style that makes it stand out from what can be frequently seen in the genre. Can you tell us a bit about the process for the cover?
So that's James Nunn's work. You can find him at James. We've just Googled James and Nunn with 2 N's. And my publishers knew him from some other work that he'd done. I think they might have researched to look for people who were doing illustrative work in pen and ink. And I think that was the aim that they were going for. I mean, a lot of fantasy novels, as I'm sure you're aware, are very glossy affairs. I mean, this is a terrible thing to say, but usually of a kind of woman's ass from the back, like standing in front of with an axe, standing in front of a mountain or something along those lines. I think they really wanted to avoid those kind of tropes. So they instead went with this kind of illustrative, like depictions of what was going on in the book, because the front cover is an early scene from Nathan's experience in the slums. And I think they really like that. And there's also, they're massive fans of Mervyn Peake, who wrote Gormenghast, who was an illustrator himself. And Mervyn Peake's novels have got a very similar vibe, particularly the front cover of Gormenghast and Titus Groan. They're these kind of very similar kind of style. And James Nunn was drawing in that style. He does other stuff too. Actually, I should pick this up. This is can you see this? That's his.
Oh, that's Bellows.
This is Bellows, exactly.
That's Bellows. Yeah,
it is. And this was never in the book, and hasn't been shown. So this is his drawing of Bellows that she sent me after he finished. So he was really good at doing that stuff. And I think Tor picked it up too. So I'm guessing that when James gets the first drafts of Malarkoi, the next book, he'll be also doing the drawings for those, and it will probably make it to the States on the front of Tor's covers too. I would have thought, unless they're going to do something really weird, like have 3 books with different aesthetics, which I know happens, but I think would be unusual.
Yeah, it would. It would indeed.
So he worked a lot where I got alternate covers as well, which unfortunately I haven't got here. There's an alternate cover which looked, which was a tiny Nathan in front of a big glass road, which was also really nice. And Mordew was written on the glass road. But we did an event at Golden Hare Books in Edinburgh, which might have been recorded if you're interested to go and have a look, where James Nunn and I talk about the process of writing the book and also of doing the covers. Yeah,
I would love to see a special edition with more of his illustrations of the characters.
Yeah, I would have liked to have had an entirely illustrated edition. That would have been great. Yeah. I think the other thing that I guess it was trying to evoke was Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which I think also had similar kind of Victorian-esque style etching type drawings in it. But there was an illustrated version of that, wasn't there? I seem to recall that at least there were 10 or so plates inside. I really like that idea. I think he mentioned once that he would like to do it as a graphic novel. So
yes.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Oh, nice.
I wish I could draw. That was one of my main things. I mean, writing's all well and good, but imagine you could draw. That'd be fantastic. You just draw everything. You don't have to
just draw everything. It's so much faster.
Yeah, it is.
I think I want to go see if we've got time for. I think we have time for one more question.
Okay, cool.
Let me see what we've got here. Oh, here we are. What scene or section gave you the most joy or satisfaction to write?
Well, you see, that might be the one I've already mentioned, the one that got took out. So I'll have to think of another one that didn't.
Yeah.
I liked the parts with Anaximander the talking dog, right? So there's a huge section towards the end that you went to, Roger, which is all from Anaximander the talking dog's point of view. He has an interlude in the towards the end of the book, just at the end of part 2, as you go into part 4. I won't tell you what happens in it,
right.
But it's all written in this kind of in his mindset, which I thought was nice. I think that I really enjoyed doing. That I did kind of quite late on in the process. Yeah,
I love Anaximander. I love when I first met him during the burglary. And have a very reasonable mastiff or whatever he is coming up to you saying, "Now it is my duty to kill you. So would you please come onto the plank so we don't ruin Mistress's carpet? I'll make it faster if you go to the planks."
Well, that's perfectly reasonable. Yeah,
it's reasonable. It's reasonable.
It is reasonable. I mean, it's going to have to happen. You don't need to make a mess of someone's carpet while it goes on.
Why be selfish?
Indeed. Yeah. So I think that was the funnest part. I really enjoyed writing those bits, and they flowed really easily. I think my natural style is kind of legalese and kind of slightly endlessly complicated sentences with a lot of prevarication and and hedging in it. Those are the things that I like to write. I really, 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 really like boring things. I don't like, not to say that the book's boring, but I like to push things past their enjoyable limit onto the part in which they're no longer enjoyable. And then just to have that and just leave it.
Another thing I need to sneak another thing in here. Another thing I really enjoy is the character of the Joes. Yeah. I really love the idea that you had twins and that somehow during the gestation they got sort of slammed into cosmologically sort of into occupying the same space, so that when you encounter them they flicker, and it's in the fraternal twins, so it's like now the boy, now the girl, now the boy, now the girl, and it allows them, since they're sort of existing on two intersecting planes at the same time, they can do really messed up things. Like you don't want to knife fight them because the knife is on the floor, but it's also in their hand going in your simultaneously.
Yeah, I got some really good feedback from them. I mean, I was really pleased. One of the bloggers in England who's a non-binary blogger and who looks particularly at queer representations in fantasy fiction was really pleased with that, and I was pleased that he was pleased too, because
it was a very baked-in way to get people comfortable saying they.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I find that whole anxiety over they as a singular pronoun to be ridiculous. I mean, quite why that has come up. It's just so crazy. But like you were saying, it's the reactionary forces, opposing any kind of progress. Again, just like they would have done throughout the entirety of history by making nonsensical objections to things that are perfectly reasonable. Everyone said they. Or one, for God's sake. I mean, particularly in the UK, the Queen goes around and says one does this and one does that. And she uses we as a singular. So I don't know why everybody else can't.
She calls herself we.
We are not amused, etc. It's baked in. Yes.
Yep.
I can see we've come to the end.
We have the Ghost of Christmas Future has just come in.
The Ghost of Christmas Future has indeed arrived, because we are unfortunately at that hour mark where we must say adieu and thank all of the readers for joining us tonight, as well as for Alex and Christopher for hanging out with us tonight. It was a pleasure getting to listen to the two of you speak, so thank you so much for joining us. And everyone, don't forget, if you click that button down below for purchase books, then you can go and support Alex and Christopher, and you can purchase Mordew and begin the amazing tale of this trilogy. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. And on that note, good evening, or a very good morning, or good night to Alex. And we will see you.
Lovely to meet everybody, by the way.
You too.
Yeah.
Great. I just want to say it again. Bravo. Great.
Yeah, book. Bravo to you too. The Black-Tongued Thief is excellent. But just in case if you're also in the book buying mood, it was it's certainly the best audio book I've listened to I can't remember a better audio book that I've listened to, just so you know.
Yes.
Yeah, it's excellent reading. I mean, really. Yes. Sorry.
Well, we will see you all next time. Have a good one, everyone. Bye.